Hello everyone and welcome to SplitSecond. My name is Sequeira and I'll be taking you through today's match. Before starting, we at SplitSecond want to thank everyone for your constant support and suggestions on all social media. You can continue to support us by sharing and liking this video, subscribing if you haven't yet, by becoming a patron, or simply by not ad-blocking the ads on our videos. Due to the current global situation, we are currently self-quarantining and recording our matches digitally. This week I'm playing my Naya Stax brew for Ardenn and Tana. Luís is playing Igligl's Grixis eggs with Jeska and Silas. David is on Mateus Nogueira's freed Zaxara, and Baal is playing Pongo's Najeela. Baal has managed to get that victorious roll and is starting. His hand is on the OK side with Waterlogged Grove, Tarnished Citadel, and Verdant Catacombs for lands, plus Wild Growth and Carpet of Flowers for ramp. The all-star is his ability to either rush Najeela on turn 2 or just go for Sylvan Library to rack up on card draw. Pact of Negation could be key to protecting his winning turn. My keep has some risks because of the lack of a third land, only having Shatterskull the Hammer Pass and Bountiful Promenade. However, Survival of the Fittest can be used in a pinch for a dork, while Stony Silence should host everyone else's decks to varying degrees. Skullclamp is amazing with Ardenn, while even Mind Sensor is a solid way to reduce the people's ability to play Magic. Sun Titan gives me extra permanence under Rule of Law effects. Brundown's Keep is pretty nice when you consider how good Mishra's Workshop is in his deck, with Volcanic Island backing up his mana. He has either Spell Bomb and Red Elemental Blast as tools to interact with the board, whereas Chromatic Star and Mishra's Bauble can give him card draw with Silas for really no drawback. Grim Monolith is a great rock overall. David's hand has two halves of different combos, with Thassa's Oracle missing something like Consultation and Freed from the Real, perfect on Zaxara, missing an infinite mana outlet. Nonetheless, he has 3 lands, Underground Sea, Forest, and a Marsh Flats. The latter also pretty good with the Brainstorm sitting in his hand. Finally, you can't go wrong with Elvish Mystic as ramp. Time to run this game. Baal starts us off with the Verdant Catacombs cracked for a Taiga, following that up by enchanting his land with Wild Growth. The tone is set for a potential turn 2 Najeela. I play a Bountiful Promenade and drop the freshly drawn Llanowar Elves, which improves my entire hand. Luís plays a Mishra's Workshop, warranting some gasps on the stack. They resolve and he casts Grim Monolith, followed by a Chromatic Star, and finishes with a Mishra's Bauble. Because really, why not? On his turn, David plays a Marsh Flats and cracks it for a Bayou. He then plays Elvish Mystic, following the 1 mana ramp trend. Baal plays Tarnished Citadel. He thinks for a while but ends up not risking tossing Najeela onto Jeska's path and plays a Sylvan Library and a Carpet of Flowers, setting himself up. I begin my turn by playing an untapped Shatterskull the Hammer Pass. I then decide to bathe on Luís's tears as I play Stony Silas, confident in this plan to take a player out of the match for a bunch of turns. In response, Luís cracks his Mishra's Bauble to look at my top card. He sees a Conqueror's Flail before cracking Chromatic Star for blue, hoping for counter magic. He does not find any. Preparing myself for David next, I play Skullclamp and pass. Luís draws from the Bauble and then for turn. He finds and plays Badlands, casts his either Spell Bomb and passes. David plays Wild Growth on his Bayou, setting himself for Zaxara. Then he plays his Underground Sea and merely casts Heuristic Study. Luís does not like this, and seeing our colors decides to just go ahead and counter with Red Elemental Blast. On turn 3, Baal loses 8 to the library, signaling either a lot of good cards or a lot of bad ones. He had the single red mana from Carpet, plays a Scrubland, and then casts his commander Najeela. It's my turn and I want to start getting ahead, so I play Ardenn. I go to combat, triggering my commander and showing the table a nice little tank as he attaches Skullclamp to target permanent, in this case David's Elvish Mystic. The elf dies, I draw 2 while finding and dropping Plateau. It's Luís's turn and he goes ahead and plays Morphic Pool before passing. Recovery mode is going pretty slow. David is now at the helm as he plays a Forest and casts Zaxara. Things turn for the worse when Baal uses David's end step to cast a Lindul's Vault. Suddenly, we're not so sure the game will go past turn 4. He only uses it once, which bodes even worse. Baal pays 4 to draw an additional card from the library. He adds 1 green from Carpet and plays a Waterlogged Grove before proceeding to cast Nature's Will. The table can't react, and it also would not matter as he had 2 free counterspells up and ready. The match is over as he can attack Luís with Najeela and the token, generate mana from the Nature's Will to activate Najeela, and from there just takes over the game with infinite combats. Good game. Of course, with such a fast match, we have decided to give our decks another spin to try and show off some more cool stuff. We shuffle up and we're ready for match number 2. I won the roll this time around. I mulligan once, feeling very confident in my second hand despite it being a bit slow. Stomping Ground and Arid Mesa as my only lands are fine, especially since I have 2 tutors in Worldly Tutor and Survival of the Fittest, for whatever becomes necessary to find, namely a Collector Oof. Archon of Ymiri is just insanely strong versus everyone else's game plans, Ardenn Frostfang is really strong with Tana, and Flawless Maneuver protects my board from Jeska. Luís was a bit unlucky as he was forced to mulligan down to 6. He kept Command Tower and an island as his lands, with a repeat of Mishra's Bauble and either Spellbomb on his starting hand because Cockatrice is not about shuffling. Swan Song and Deflecting Swat are great interaction, while Flusterstorm is slightly narrower and thus got sent to the bottom. David's hand is overall balanced with Forest and Morphic Pool for lands, while Carpet of Flowers and Mana Crypt both ramp him really hard. Assassin's Trophy is excellent for interacting, Narset is always good to slow us down and dig, and Yawgmoth's Will is one of the strongest recursion spells in the game. Baal also mulligan once. He has both Mana Confluence, Taiga, Marsh Flats, and Misty Rainforest for lands, representing some flood, but Mana Crypt can represent a turn 1 Najeela to be exalted by Noble Hierarch. And Oakham Adversary, incidentally a warrior, could push his board presence while drawing him some cards. Excited for game 2? Let's see how it goes. My top deck promises to turn the match on its head as I play Plateau into a Mana Crypt. With that, I cast Archon of Ymiri and you can hear the pain echoing all the way into future matches. Luís plays a tapped Command Tower. He does get to cast a free Mishra's Bauble before passing to David. David plays a Forest and gets to cast his own top deck, a Llanowar Elves. His board isn't looking too bad, all things considered. Baal, however, just plays a tapped Taiga. Fearing the game's slowed speed, he keeps on pushing for Mana Crypt to avoid being the first target of my Archon, passing instead. Mana Crypt decides to punish me for this start. I take even more damage as I play an untapped Stomping Ground and cast Tana, ready to swarm the board. I go ahead and attack David with the Archon, since his board is the most advanced right now. On my end step, Luís cracks the bauble and looks at my top, taking a gander on what is to come. He sees the Birds of Paradise, not at all impressed. Come his upkeep, Luís banks on the bauble draw and plays a tapped City of Brass, followed by an Either Spellbomb which could prove invaluable soon. On his turn, David plays a tapped Morphic Pool and attacks Luís with the Elves since he is pretty sure he's on Ad Nauseam. He keeps on committing to the board. It's Baal's turn and he plays a tapped Badlands. He follows that up with Ramp in the shape of Noble Hierarch. Slow and steady wins the race. This time around, the Crypt forgives me. I drop a Plains and the social stack is a bit grossed out as Ardenn Frostfang hits the board. I send the Archon at Baal and Tana at David to slowly pressure the 2 players who are most ahead. Tana spawns a couple of Saprolings and I draw 2. Things might get nasty soon. Luís plays an island untapped and filled with joy and then considers his options before playing Nihil Spellbomb. This way, either Spellbomb can be used on stuff like my Frostfang. David goes for a simpler route, playing Carpet of Flowers and watching untapped. Baal plays his own tapped Forbidden Orchard. He's then able to cast a discounted Oakham Adversary to try and rack up on some draw. He passes to me. The Crypt's mercy continues. I start my turn by playing Spire Garden and moving to combat in order to get that Spellbomb out of the way. I attack Baal with the Archon and David with everything else to check for flashers. Before damage, Luís puts a lid on my card draw by cracking the Either Spellbomb and bouncing my hissing card draw engine back into my hand. With the Spellbomb out, I play Ardenn intending to win next turn. On my end step, Luís goes ahead and also sacks the Nihil Spellbomb, exiling my lone fetch land and drawing 1. It's Luís's turn and he plays a tapped Skull Tarn and casts Silas as this boosts Jeska and gives him some tools from the graveyard. He passes. Now that he's playing, David adds black with carpet and casts a nasty Toxic Deluge for 3. Board wipes in cEDH. This one seemed pretty timely though, and now David is able to drop his own Mana Crypt and then a Felwar Stone. On his turn, Baal plays Marsh Flats and instantly cracks it for a Bayou, glad to have his fetches unlocked. He also casts a Mana Crypt, and now Luís opens the social stack to declare he feels left out. Baal casts Najeela. In response, just in case there's a Fierce Guardianship in wait, I cast Whirly Tutor and put a Yasharn on top since I need to ramp up to Ardenn once again. Baal then casts Mindblade Render before passing. The Crypt's Blessing continues, gracefully accepted before I cast Yasharn and get myself a Plains and a Forest, the latter of which getting played. I then enchant my Stomping Ground with Utopia Sprawl and top my turn off by casting Survival of the Fittest without open green mana. I pass. On Luís's turn, he is not happy as he top decks a Lotus Petal, which he drops. Now, it should be noted that we do misread how Yasharn affects lands, specifically how it simply hoses fetch lands. This is seen as we allowed Luís to sacrifice Skull Tarn to get a Badlands when he was not able to. We also overreacted a bit to the Mindblade Render's text box, and Luís uses Jeska to take out Najeela as it initially appeared he was about to draw 4 on his next turn. On his turn, David plays a good old Narset Parter of Veils, trying to follow that up with a Windfall. At this point, Luís goes very much no, and counters it with a Swan Song, averting some tragedy despite the risk posed by my survival if the Windfall had resolve. David goes ahead and activates Narset, which unfortunately finds him literally 4 lands. He looks at his 2 lands in play, sighs, and passes. Baal also wins the Crypt roll. He plays and secretly illegally cracks Misty Rainforest for a Tundra before recasting Najeela. Regardless, he had a Shockland which could have replaced the fetch, thus not changing his turn's outcome. He attacks Narset with Mindblade Render, triggering Najeela for an extra attacking warrior. The Swan eats the warrior. Take a second to picture that, and Narset is 1 loyalty counter down. The Crypt's infatuation for me at this point is for life. I drop a Plains and cast Ardenn, ready to show another tank as I move to beginning of combat. My commander triggers and moves Utopia Sprawl to a basic forest, ramp. On my second main phase, I drop Tendershoot Dryad and get the City's Blessing while attempting to bait whatever spot removal is still left on my opponent's hands. On Luís's upkeep, I drop a Saproling. He casts a Demonic Tutor to get a Cabal Ritual, intending on cashing in a big ad nows while hoping the table is handled in the meantime. He casts Sense's Divining Top and passes. It's David's turn and he loses to the Crypt roll while a second Saproling hits the board. At this stage of the game, Baal implies he has a Noxious Revival in his hand that David could use to get Toxic Deluge. However, this play demands that Yasharn is removed since the Hate Boar, pun intended, prevents the casting of the Deluge. And so David adds black with carpet and casts Assassin's Trophy on Yasharn. Because Deluge stops me from winning due to Ardenn's death, I decide to risk Baal keeping Najeela for another turn and cast Flawless Maneuver. In response, Luís looks at the top 3 with his top in an attempt to counter my maneuver. However, everything resolves, I get to keep Yasharn and also get myself a forest. David plays Arcane Signet and passes to Baal. On his turn, Baal discards a Watery Grave to Mox Diamond, plays a Mana Confluence, yup, he noticed later it should be the other way around, and attacks Narset with the Mindblade Render, while Luís is hit by Najeela. His commander triggers, getting him 2 1/1 tokens, both of which are aimed straight at Narset. Before damage and drawing from the Mindblade Render, Baal activates Najeela to get an additional combat. David blocks a token with the bird, eating it as well. Before his second attack phase, I activate Survival, discarding Birds of Paradise and get a Sanctum Prelate to try and influence the other player's choices. Baal draws 1 from the Mindblade Render, and he now attacks Luís with everything, creating 3 tokens and drawing another card. On my turn, I draw and play Jeweled Lotus, which cannot be sacrificed for mana. I move to casting Sanctum Prelate, opening the social stack as the table tries to determine their options. I named 2 to prevent the common 2-mana Baal spells and the Assassin's Trophy, and then activate Survival of the Fittest, discarding Hokori to get Godo. I cast him and get Helm of the Host, hoping for no responses. Moving to combat, both Helm and Ardenn trigger. I resolve Ardenn first, attaching the Helm to Godo's tiny head, which gives me infinite Godos as each of them attacks and gives me another attack phase afterwards for a new Helm of the Host trigger. Good game. Thank you for joining us for today's matches, everyone. These week's games were won by the starting players and both with infinite combats to boot. We'd like to start the credits by thanking our current patrons and especially Izanagi, Stefan, TJ Rapp, Mike Purr, Ajimo, Igligl, Drunken Housecat, Uncrustable, Cosmic Astro, and V, our stack breakers. If you want to go through other Commander adventures, click one of the videos on the right. If you want to talk with us about our games or other EDH related matters, join us on Discord. Come with us again next week for a new set of commanders and more decisive plays. See you all then.